kids not having as much fun as they were about to go have.
Well, driving by the school, like on the way to Disneyland.
So if you say, well, I'd like to do this instead of you going to school for the next, make life so exciting that school doesn't seem as exciting.
Do we want to, is that question done? I'm fine. Okay.
Just, if you all can reflect back on a week where you could share with us kind of, I know no one in here has a typical week or a typical day, but for people that are intrigued by unschooling but are very schooled themselves, like, do you use curriculum? Do you use workbooks? Do you farm out any classes?
Okay, what age do you want to talk about?
I have elementary, but
okay.
it would be.
So can you guys tell what can you say? Like a week is kind of a lot. It's like let's go with a day. Okay, so how about everybody like sort of puts together a day in their head about what they would spend a day doing that would be not unusual.
My almost 16-year-old daughter loves this question because she laughs whenever she's asked it, because there is no typical day in an unschooling life. She has out and about days that are super busy where we're traveling or at a conference or even just grocery shopping and doing errands all day. So we have two different kinds of out and about days, the ones where we're out of town and the ones where we're in town. And then we have the do nothing at home days where we're learning just as much, if not more. And we don't purposely schedule anything on those days, and we try to do that at least like 3 days a week on average, because you can't schedule anything. A typical day, rather. You can't schedule things like a conference, but you cannot schedule a typical day in an unschooler's life. And no, we never used any sort of curriculum or worksheets. Whatever the kids were interested in, that's what we did.
I would definitely ditto that. My kids are always, it's funny, we have a lot of time at home, but they're always begging for more time at home. More time to just do nothing. It's like, you do nothing a lot, but nothing in quotes, because they're online, I'm shocked sometimes at the things they know. I'll look at them and say, how did you know that? I just had no idea that they knew this, whatever. It's like, oh, it was mentioned in something, and so I Googled it, and there they are, clicking around different things, learning about all kinds of things you just never even think about when they have that free time. Most of our really in-depth conversations start about 11:45 at night. So there's lots of conversation, which is one of the things I realized early on was so important. It was more important than what are you doing. When they were younger, the days looked a lot more physical, and projects and messes and whatnot, and now the house stays a little cleaner, but they're all into all kinds of things. My daughter does a lot of Skyping, and she does a lot of gaming while she's Skyping, so a lot of her social time is online, and she has friends all around the world. And yeah.
I'm really sorry I'm so late. I had no idea what time it was. I was talking to Barbara Chase, and she was really interesting, darn her. I have a collection on my page, on my site, of typical days that we collected a few years back, and people wrote a day that they felt like was worth reporting. So if you want to read that, go to sandradodd.com. Typical.
No sarcasm. Typical.
I'm not sure what a typical day is. One day is just after the other. There are activities that the kids do. There's no particular curriculum that we've ever done, no workbooks or any particular subjects. I gave that up a long, long time ago. I guess the T-shirt that's going around, oh no, not another learning experience. Sums it all up, so I learned to, whenever the opportunity comes, oh, that's really cool, let's talk about that. It's like I'm forcing my agenda on the kids, and it goes absolutely nowhere. So, my daughter, and both my daughter and my son are involved in the Nature awareness program at the Rifle Center, that's really valuable, but that's about as structured as it gets. And you know, then a few classes with theater, whatever comes up, and sometimes it seems like, oh my God, there's not a moment. You know, there's always driving somewhere. Kids, it's almost a frenzy getting from one place to another. And other times it looks like there's days and days where no one's going out of the house and just doing their things at home.
Yeah, I also want to echo that there's really no typical day. A lot of the stuff that we end up doing, pretty much Laz is into his own stuff. He does a lot of gaming online, a lot of Skyping as well, so he gets a lot of social time that way with friends around the country. We have a puppy now and some kittens, so there's a lot of learning and like kind of figuring out what life is like now. So it's really hard to answer what it is. A couple things here. So pretty much whatever he's interested in at the time. We tend to do things, you know, go to the local museums or go over to Walnut Creek, and he's a big fan of the Lune Wildlife Museum there. So we plan outings to do. Also try to make offerings of things that might be interesting, and usually gaming wins out for most of the day to some folks' frustration, but it's a matter of really just letting go and finding out what's up with my kid and what he's really got a lot of juice for, and just hooking into that, and putting the pedal to the metal, and by 11 o'clock, you know, mom and dad are just so tired. Then he wants to bust out the clay and do claymation, and so about 2 in the morning, you know, and he's got the art stuff out, and he's planning his art show for, you know, the next year. He has this really cute art show in the park down the street. He set up a tent and had all these little drawings of birds and everything out, and people came and had a, you know, soda and pie and stuff. It was really cute. So I don't know, it's random, awesome, great stuff just comes up, but it's really about listening.
So a typical day at our house when the kids were younger might include they would get out of bed one at a time at different times and wander around in the living room and then say, I'm hungry, and I'd say, what do you want? And then they'd say, oh, I want waffles. And I'd say, okay, we have waffles. Do you want to have blueberry syrup? Yeah. Could we make that syrup that you made that time? Yeah, okay. We'd do that. That would take up, you know, time. And then I'd say, oh, I was thinking about making Play-Doh today. You want to do that? And one of them would say yes. And then, or by the time I'd be doing something here, then the other ones would be in the bedroom playing Star Trek and making little pieces, things, equipment out of cardboard. And they'd be busy doing that. And then they would have a TV show they wanted to watch maybe, and they'd be watching that. But in the meantime, I would think, I bet they would like to play with their big dollhouse today. That would be cool. And I'd bring that out and pull it out in front of the TV and all their little dollhouse pieces, and they'd start playing with that, and that would, watching their show would start to meld into that, and pretty soon I'd notice the TV was kind of loud, it was interfering with their play, and I'd go turn that down a little, and then I'd slice up a bunch of oranges and go take them so they could eat oranges while they were playing, and then one of them would get tired of playing, and they'd want to go swim in the pool, and I'd say, does everyone want to swim in the pool? Yeah, okay. Scramble to find swimsuits, we'd go in the pool, I'd sit there and watch them for an hour, and then they'd be really hungry again. So then I'd spend another hour figuring out, you know, food and playing and talking, and then, oh, I would have, like, maybe by that time I'd say, well, we were going to make Play-Doh today, remember? And we'd go in the kitchen and make Play-Doh, and we'd think about things to add to it, because you could add all kinds of weird things like oatmeal or pineapple flavoring or something, and we would talk about that, and then they'd do that till there was kind of a mess, and then something else would come up, and then something else would come up, and something else would come up, and we would just move from one thing. Very frequently there would be piles of books people would be reading to each other. I paid Roxana to read to Rosie a lot because she read really well and liked to read out loud, and you know, I had 3 kids, so it was hard for me to read enough to Rosie as much as she wanted, so I'd pay Roxana so she'd go off and read to Rosie for money. And then, you know, it would be, oh, we would have, one of them would say, can so-and-so come over? So I'd call that mom and say, you know, the kids want to know if so-and-so can come over. So another kid would drop in and come and play for a while, and then it would be dinner time. And, you know, that's our day. It was just like that. There was no time in which there was math time, English time, writing time, special reading time. There was reading a lot. It was more about food Right? I mean, a lot of the day revolves around now it's time for food, now it's time for snacks, now it's time for breakfast, and then go out for dinner, go to the grocery store, that kind of thing. So their days, I think, would have felt kind of like that, like, right? And then there would be the days where we got up, like Lisa was saying, the day that we got up and went out, and we were all day out with friends and had exciting, adventurous things to do outside of the house. And those, of course, they revolved around where we were going to eat while we were out and get food ready to take with us. But no, we had lots of kinds of days. None of them involved that kind of day that you might have been asking about. Did we have any worksheets or assignments or requirements or anything like that? Yes.
When I started thinking about unschooling, I was pregnant with my first child, and meanwhile, this 6 or 7 years, we relocated 4 times transatlantically, and there was a major health crisis, and there was diagnosing my kid with behavioral things, and we realized that structure sometimes helps her, and what do you do when reality strikes idealism? Because it's tough for us to sometimes we did the whole no boundaries, no diapers, no nothing, like on everything. And sometimes it's just tough in the day-to-day life. And sometimes, when your kids are in certain ages, there are other challenges. So I would like to hear about your challenges, not about the pretty picture.
So how do you handle it when there's a crisis or difficulty or challenges? Is that what you're saying?
Essentially.
But you're describing having done everything and not done enough. That's not a good description of unschooling at all.
It's a sarcasm, really. But
Right, but it's not a good day for it. If you were not making your life rich and happy and full, then you might get behavioral problems exacerbated, and you might feel like you needed something. But if your life was really busy and full and happy, you wouldn't feel like you needed structure, I think. I mean, yes, and you have a particular situation, I understand. But when a family thinks that doing nothing is what unschooling is, and then the kids start being different or difficult, or someone's sick, or you're moving, good, solid, happy, busy unschooling should be only enriched by moving. And it shouldn't be shut down by an illness.
3 months, 100% in bed of the mother is kind of debilitating educationally.
There shouldn't have been any educationally involved. So that I think if you're trying to describe a picture of unschooling and ask us for advice about it, I'm just saying.
No. I'm essentially asking what happens when you have a big challenge that kind of like confronts with your ideas.
What do you have? What happens when there's a big challenge in their school? Then the kids have to go to school and they're all distracted. They're not doing well there. So compared to what? If the kids, I don't think Pam wants us to go down the row and all tell negative stories. That doesn't help anybody. But when a parent is ill, when there's unemployment, when the roof fell in, when the dog died, well, it's starting to sound like when the dog died. You just wake up in the morning and do the best you can that day. You make sure that people have something to do, and that they're reassured if they're scared, and that they have some food, and that their bed isn't having a leak on it.
I feel much better about myself right now.
Because that's what you did, right?
Yeah, because that's all anybody can do. But the lucky thing is you didn't have the addition of having to get them up and ready to school for school and help them with homework. So I think that that's a perfect time to be unschooling when you're moving back and forth and someone's sick.
I have a good friend here who, that's when they started homeschooling and unschooling, is when they had a major health challenge with one of her children. And he ended up not going back to school, and then the younger one didn't want to go to school, the older one didn't. So they ended up really pulling together as a family and having more time, because it was stretched too thin to be doing school and have this health problem, and people really, life was the health problem. And they wanted to be living that life with their family, and so that's kind of what happened for them.
I have this maybe everybody does, to tell like this really horrible, tragic story of a family I know who was unschooling and how much easier it was when they were unschooling. Or the opposite, like people I know who had really rough times, difficult problems when the kids were in school and how awful it was for them to be in school. I want to resist that, like Sandra said, because that can be really depressing. But I do know, I can tell you, like a lot of different situations where people have really bad things and the kids were in school, and that meant that they, not only they had bad things in their family, school was bad too. School was really bad for them then.
So mine, but I would just make it more clear that the question is not whether a school would make my life easier. It was never an option.
Uh-huh.
The question essentially is, you know, I heard Sandra talk the other day, and she said, make 180 days in a year valuable. And I'm like, oh shit.
Oh, okay. How about I paraphrase it?
365 days.
How about I paraphrase it and say try to? Because life throws you problems and you cope, you know, and you can't. Unschooling can't mean that mom doesn't get sick, you know, I mean, that's not going to solve that problem.
Or you could be sick for 185 days.
So, I mean, one of the questions I might have is, what does an educational day look like to you? And
It looks like what Pam just said, essentially. With the blueberries and the Play-Doh.
She's available and doing things.
No, but my point is, I learned this from this incredible woman right next to me when I was going through my big questions. I think it was right here at this conference, what, 12?
Probably in this room.
12 years ago, and you challenged, I mean, it was a packed room, and you challenged us all to come up with one thing that could happen in the day that was not an educational opportunity. And you were giving away with your sticks, I think. That was a reward that you got for a free set of those. What would you call those sticks?
Thinking sticks.
The thinking sticks. So, I mean, what are we learning that's valuable? And it's about life and life and death and illness, and what an incredible learning opportunity your kids just went through with mom in bed. Oh, I'm sorry. So I think it's a really positive, empowering thing, that they valuable experience that they went through. We can't always like put a name or a label and say, okay, we learned that thing, there's a checkbox. I mean, learning just happens 24/7.
Oh, I just wanted to say I've seen your kids around, and I would have to imagine that this question, it comes from you, not from them. And to just manage and think about your own things that are coming up there, because they seem like incredible, vital, dynamic things, and that what they get from a mom who's caring so much about that is fantastic. But just to not maybe let that, to manage it yourself so that that part doesn't bleed into theirs, because I don't think they have that right now.
But they were still, you know, like, I mean, I never had that serious, but like if I was in bed with a cold or the flu for 3 days, my kids were still alive and active and doing things and talking. They were still living. They were still, you know, one time I walked by my nephew. My sister and I were in her living room, and my nephew, who was, I don't know, 4, something like that, he was poking his finger in a hole of the couch and pulling out the stuffing and feeling it. And he had this look on his face. You know which kid this was. You know it had to be Alex. So he's pulling the stuffing out of the back of the couch, and he's feeling it. He's like this. He looks like this, like. So feel of that fuzz, you know. And my sister, I said, "Oh, he's pulling all the stuffing out of your couch," and she said, "Oh, but look at him. He's having this like tactile experience." And he was pulling the stuffing out of the couch, and so you don't have any idea. You were laid out, not aware. Your kids were still having maybe tactile experiences or all kinds of other experiences because you weren't living it with them. Didn't mean it didn't happen.
And they weren't exiled from you.
No.
At school.
Okay. Yeah, and that was the point about the school, is like could be way worse.
I do have several questions, but I went through something similar. I had surgery that almost killed me, and I couldn't